Tēnā koutou, ko Sue Brewster, Takawingawa. Well, hello everyone. My name is Sue Brewster and I'm the Executive Director of Auckland Medical Research Foundation. This year, our foundation turns 67, and since our inception in 1955, we have awarded nearly $90 million worth of funding to world-class medical researchers right here in New Zealand. For us at AMRF, our commitment to improving the health of all New Zealanders is unwavering. And thanks to the equally unwavering support of our donors, cures, preventions, and treatments for all types of diseases and conditions continue to be found. It is my very great privilege to introduce one of those world-class researchers we have funded, Dr Emma Nolan, to you tonight in the first of our 2022 online lecture series. Emma is a highly successful cancer biologist who was awarded the AMRF Douglas Goodfellow Repatriation Fellowship to bring her back from overseas, where she had made 2 breakthrough discoveries in cancer treatment. Tonight, Hayley McLaren, a journalist and public relations guru who supports us in our work, will interview Emma on her past and current research and the importance of returning home to continue in her work. You'll hear Emma refer to work she's had published both in Melbourne and London, and we'll have links to both of those published pieces at the end of the presentations. Hayley will also talk to Associate Professor Michael Hay, who heads up the Auckland Cancer Society Research Centre, and he will talk about the significance of Emma's work and having her knowledge and skills back in New Zealand. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Sit back and relax for about the next 20 minutes or so, and I'm now going to hand over the reins to Hayley and Emma.
Hi Emma, thank you so much for your time. I'm really looking forward to finding out a bit more about your research.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here today, and I'm really excited to be back in New Zealand as well. So I'm a cancer biologist. I am the recipient of the AMRF Douglas Goodfellow Repatriation Fellowship, and I recently started a breast cancer research group at the University of Auckland.
How long have you been a medical researcher?
So I've been a medical researcher for just over a decade. After my undergraduate degree at the University of Otago, I moved to Australia, and this was to do my PhD. And I was looking at breast cancer prevention in high-risk women who inherit the faulty gene BRCA1. So after 5 years in Australia, I then moved to London, and this was to do my postdoctoral studies. And this here I was still in breast cancer research, but I was looking at more advanced cancer, so understanding why breast cancers can spread and grow throughout the body. So earlier this year, after just under 11 years, I moved home to New Zealand, and now I'm starting a breast cancer research group at the University of Auckland.
How important is it to bring back people with your expertise and knowledge and be researching in New Zealand?
New Zealand, as you know, is a small country, and it is quite isolated down here from the rest of the world. So I think it's incredibly important to have researchers, firstly, to have the opportunity to go overseas, and it allows them to be exposed to new skills and technologies, and to build connections with researchers across the world. But it's also really important for cancer researchers to come back to New Zealand and share what they've learned, and really sort of build the teams.
Emma, can you tell me a little bit about how you got into medical research?
I started off studying medicine in Dunedin and at the University of Otago, and I really enjoyed it, but I actually found that the part I loved the most when I was studying medicine was actually the lab work, and I really loved doing the experiments, and so I actually ended up after about 6 months in medical school switching to a degree in biochemistry, and it was the best decision I ever made.
What made you move to Australia as opposed to staying in New Zealand?
So I moved to Australia because I was given this opportunity to work and to do my PhD at the Walter and Eliza Hall. And this is an institute in Melbourne. It's really world leading in cancer research, and all types of cancer research, but they had a really fantastic breast cancer research lab there. And I knew that would really benefit me long term when I returned to New Zealand, to have this really powerful connection with Australian researchers.
And was there a reason that you found yourself moving towards breast cancer research?
Cancer is a devastating disease, but it's also fascinating how incredible the cancer cells are, how resilient they are, how they can grow in hostile environments. And breast cancer just affects such a profoundly large group of women and their families that I was very interested in doing whatever I could to try and improve the treatment for these women.
I understand that you were able to author some quite significant work.
So in Melbourne, I was fortunate to have a really amazing discovery, and this was that we identified an existing drug which could perhaps be used to prevent breast cancer arising in these women that inherit a BRCA1 gene mutation. So what this meant was this drug could perhaps be repurposed to prevent these women and buy them time so they didn't have to have surgical removal of their breasts. And so this drug actually excitingly went into clinical trial, and it is now in a phase 3 international breast cancer prevention trial. And this is the first trial to directly look at prevention in BRCA1 mutation carriers. So I'm very excited to see what the results of this trial will be. And this was one of the really main and exciting outcomes from my PhD research.
What was your next career move from Melbourne?
So after I finished my PhD in Melbourne, I moved to London, and this was to do my postdoctoral research at Francis Crick. So the Francis Crick Institute is it's a world-leading institute, and it was a fantastic opportunity for me to gain more skills and to improve my connections and collaborations as well. And it's really sort of one of the hubs of cancer research in Europe.
Tell me about your time in the UK.
So in my research in London, we were looking at the effects of radiation therapy on cancer progression. And this is because a large number of patients will undergo radiation therapy as part of their treatment for cancer. And what we found is that when healthy tissues are exposed to radiation, this actually triggers a regenerative response. So the tissue becomes injured and then starts to become repaired. But what we found is that the immune system, when it contributes to this repair, the cells will enter the tissue and start to really try and repair the injury. We found that this can actually inadvertently support cancer cell growth. So cancer cells benefit from growing in a regenerative environment. So this has quite important implications for patient treatments, because we need to really understand this process and understand how tissue injury might actually fuel cancer growth, and this could impact on their treatments. So excitingly, this research was published in a prestigious journal, Nature Cancer, and was actually featured on the cover. And this was really exciting, and it received some commentary in other scientific journals, as well as some features in news and social media. So this was a really rewarding and exciting part of the research process. And it's great to see other scientists, as well as the community, really engaging and reading this research. And I hope that one day that this may also lead to a benefit in patient treatment.
I mean, it's incredible what you've achieved in your career. What's made you want to come home?
It's always been my career goal to establish a research lab in New Zealand, but I wanted to wait until the right time, until I felt that I'd gained enough experience overseas and established enough connections. So it just really felt like it was the right time. I'd learned a lot overseas. I'd met some incredible people and made some incredible connections, and I really wanted to bring this home with me and really launch myself in the community here.
And what's involved? What are the first few things that you need to achieve?
So over the next 6 months, I have quite a big job ahead of me. I need to set up the new lab. I need to order all the reagents and everything I'll need. I need to have applications for my ethics approval. And then really excitingly, I need to start building up my team. So I need to find some great keen students to join me and technicians to help me really set up and establish this research group. So it's going to be a busy couple of months, but I can't wait.
And tell me, what will you be researching?
So in New Zealand, I'm going to be establishing new and innovative models of breast cancer research. And this will be finding new ways in which scientists in the lab can really study breast cancer in a much more complex and sophisticated way. So there's a technology called Organoids, which has really revolutionized cancer research across the world. And this is where you take stem cells from a patient tumor or tissue, and you use this to build mini 3D structures that highly resemble the organ from which they were derived. So tumor organoids are known as mini tumors in a dish. They're essentially mini tumors derived from stem cells that highly resemble the donor tumor from the patient from which they were derived. So you can use these mini tumors to study cancer biology in a much more complex way, really mimicking the correct architecture of the tumor. And also these organoids, they respond to treatment very similar to the original patient who donated the cancer cells. and they really contain the same complexity in terms of genetic mutations. So there'll be two main phases to the project. The first phase will be establishing a collection of breast tumor organoids. So I will establish this bank of organoids, which will be represent a sort of cross-section of breast cancer in New Zealand. And these will be used as a tool for my own research projects and also for researchers across the country to really advance breast cancer research.
So we'll be taking breast tumors donated by women undergoing surgery and using these to generate organoids or mini 3D tumors in the lab. These will be used for this project as well as stored to use for future analysis. At the same time, we'll also be taking breast adipose tissue or fat tissue, and this is from a woman at a range of different BMIs. And this tissue would typically be discarded after surgery, but instead we will be isolating the fat cells and growing them in the presence of these mini 3D tumors. So this will help us to answer the question of how do cancer cells grow in response to a fat environment? So how do they respond to being grown alongside fat cells, and how does this fuel their aggressive behaviors?
So it's very well known that patients with obesity typically do much worse from cancer. So they have larger tumor size, they have more advanced disease, and they respond less well to therapy. But it's not understood what the correlation is between how breast cancer cells actually interact with fat cells and how this really drives their growth. And what I hope is by developing this new model in which we can study obesity in the lab, this will identify new pathways in which we could perhaps treat patients and open up new avenues for therapy.
Thank you so much for sharing those slides, Emma. I find that really, it helps us understand the incredible work that you do. Tell me, you being home here means an awful lot to have that expertise back in New Zealand. You know, how important do you think it is for New Zealand to invest in research and to have its place on the world stage?
Absolutely. So it's amazing to have the opportunity to go overseas and learn new techniques and be exposed to some incredible leading scientists around the world. But it's also important that we come back to our country and we share the skills that we've learned overseas, and we can really build some research groups at home.
So New Zealand might be a small country, but we still contribute significantly to medical research. And there's some really impressive platforms and scientists around the country who are really driven to try and improve cancer therapy and really improve the lives of people living with cancer. So it's a really exciting time for medical research in New Zealand, and I'm really looking forward to being involved.
If AMRF hadn't been able to fund your return, what do you think you'd be doing?
The recipient of the AMRF Douglas Goodfellow Repatriation Fellowship. So if it hadn't been for the AMRF Repatriation Fellowship, I think I would probably still be in the UK. Perhaps I would have looked into going back to Australia as well. So it's really been the stepping stone that's allowed me to come home and to get started on building my research career here. The Auckland Medical Research Foundation is a really fantastic organisation, and allows both supports researchers overseas to come back, but it also provides an opportunity for us to interact and to connect with other researchers across the country. And I think importantly, the AMRF also allows New Zealand and Auckland in particular to really punch above its weight. So it allows us to make research discoveries that can really contribute internationally to cancer research. And I think it's really exciting to know that even a discovery that happens in Auckland and in a lab here can really have powerful implications around the world and benefit both researchers but also cancer patients internationally.
What would you like to say to the donors who obviously are integral to AMRF being able to fund a wealth of research projects?
I would like to say to the donors just a big thank you for allowing me this opportunity to come home, to share my skills with other researchers across the country, and really to begin my scientific career in my home country. So without your help and without your support, it's really hard for scientists to come back and establish research projects at home. So I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to get started.
So we have with us now Associate Professor Michael Hay. Michael's the Director of the Auckland Cancer Society's Research Centre.
Hello, Hayley. It's nice to be joining you. That was a fantastic talk from Emma, and you can see why we are delighted that she is joining us in the Research Centre.
And can you tell us a little bit about what the centre does?
The Auckland Cancer Society Research Centre is a research centre set up some 65 years ago to explore and develop anti-cancer medicines. And so we're charged with conducting research on the discovery and development of new cancer drugs, and also exploring the mechanisms of disease and treatment resistance.
How many researchers do you have at the centre? Is Emma a big name, a big draw card to have as part of your team?
The Auckland Cancer Society Research Centre has a staff of 60 people and a dozen or so postgraduate research students. We have a very diverse group of people working in the centre, from professors through to students, covering a wide range of disciplines. Emma is an extremely talented early career researcher whom we are delighted to have join us in the centre, and she brings a new set of skills around developing models for breast cancer that we don't currently have in the centre. So we're very pleased to bring her into the centre and provide her support and help her develop her career.
Emma's work is likely to have ramifications beyond breast cancer fields. Is it something that can be applied to other cancers further down the track?
I think the strength of Emma's work is that it is translationally relevant to breast cancer. She is taking samples from women with breast cancer, and from those samples she is going to develop these three-dimensional organoid models, which will provide a much more realistic model of real breast cancers, rather than the somewhat artificial models that are grown in laboratories that have become adapted to the laboratory. So her work is primarily going to provide impact for breast cancer patients. The development of organoid models, of course, means that other tissue types can be sampled and the same technology applied to develop models of other cancers. What she's doing is providing much more clinically relevant models.
Would it be quite common for someone who's achieved as much as Emma has to come back to New Zealand? Is it something that will definitely benefit us in the long term?
It's fantastic that Emma has chosen to return to New Zealand. I think many researchers, early career researchers, head off from our shores to seek their fortune, if you like, to go and explore the world and to develop new talents and to develop their own talent in new environments. Many of those people do come back to New Zealand, and they bring their new skills and their new connections, which are really important for enabling excellent science in New Zealand, to allow us to compete and participate on the world stage in research, and also to take that excellent research and apply it and translate it to help patients with cancer. We are really pleased to be having her join the centre, there's no doubt about it. And we really look forward to seeing how her work develops and how that will lead to improvements in therapy for cancer patients in New Zealand.
So, just as I started off tonight's presentation by saying it was a great privilege to introduce Dr. Emma Nolan, I wanted to end by saying a very big thank you to Emma, not only for taking the time to talk with us tonight, but also for the incredible work and contribution she is making to breast cancer discoveries across the globe. These types of breakthroughs take time and funding, and it seems appropriate for me to finish off with an even bigger thank you to every one of our donors that make this world-class research possible. Our researchers just couldn't do this without your support. To wrap up tonight, we're just going to show an exclusive piece that aired on News Hub recently and showcases the crucial importance of work like Dr. Emma Nolan's. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you've enjoyed tonight's presentations.
Every day, 9 women in New Zealand are diagnosed with breast cancer. It's the most common cancer among Kiwi women. But new research is about to get underway in Auckland to help understand the link between breast cancer and obesity. Here's health correspondent Lucy Warhurst with this exclusive story.
Kiwi cancer biologist Emma Nolan has already made 2 cancer research breakthroughs in Australia and the UK. Now, with funding from the Auckland Medical Research Foundation, she's setting up a laboratory here, specialising in breast cancer research.
The landscape of breast cancer in New Zealand is unique. We have got a very high incident rate of breast cancer, and also the survival rates in our country are a lot lower than other developed countries.
She'll concentrate on a relatively unstudied area of breast cancer.
So we're going to be looking at the relationship between fat tissue and cancer to understand how that supports the tumour growth.
It's well known that patients with obesity do less well from cancer. They have larger tumours, more advanced disease and respond less well to therapy. What Dr Nolan is trying to find out is why.
Phase 1 is to create a bank of tumour organoids, mini tumours grown in a dish, using tumour samples from patients undergoing surgery at North Shore Hospital.
They really resemble a patient tumour, so they grow in the same way, they respond to drugs in a very similar way and interact with other cells. So they're essentially a model for cancer in the lab.
Michelle McAteer-Ross was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2017.
People always talk about the fact that when you get told you've got cancer, that it is like the rug being pulled out from your feet, and that is exactly what it's like.
She took part in a medical trial herself and believes research is crucial.
Beyond vital. I have 2 daughters. Their chances of having breast cancer has probably been slightly raised because of me.
Emma Nolan says it's important to carry out research specific to New Zealand women.
And together we hope that this can really improve the survival of women in our country.
Making scientific advances to give future generations better chances. Lucy Warhurst, News Hub.